Perfect. We are ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming early. Marcus Pearce, welcome to the Regenerative Journey and welcome to the farmhouse at the farm at Byron Bay.
Charlie Arnott, thank you so much for having me at this beautiful location, the farm. Only about 20 minutes from home for me. I don't know whether to say it's 20 minutes from home for you or it's like your third home because you're at Hannah. You're out the back of Burke here in Byron, and then you're here during the week. It must feel like home being here.
It does. This is really, you've turned this right around just up front.
I've asked the question, haven't I?
He's an expert, this bloke. No, dead right. I when I'm in Byron Bay, I am here in the daytime at the farm at Byron Bay, and very kindly been furnished with a little office space to do my work up here, and it's a pretty loose arrangement, but it's just a lovely place. I can meet.
By
people
loose, you
here.
mean generous? Very generous.
It is. It's very absolutely, and
Yeah.
it's a great place to meet people. It's a great place to. This isn't an advertisement. It's only an advertisement for the farm.
We're just raging patriots for our local community.
We are,
and we love all things local, and we probably know half the team that work here, and
you're good people.
we're passionate about it, aren't we?
Absolutely, because I mean you can't not be when the food's this good and the view's this good. We are sitting here looking at some Scottish Highlander cows. They look like weaners out there, little calves out there. Heading to the west, there's Corellas. There's the good old Binchook flying around looking for a feed. We've got pigs, I think, just down here somewhere. Now, Oliver's hens. Oliver's hens. Yeah,
Oliver's hens, no. Talk to me about
he just
Oliver's hens.
moved them in there the other day on Tuesday. Today's Friday. And that might be him down there having a chat, unless there's some one of the visitors here. Good afternoon. He's a lovely fella, and he's doing really well. He actually started. He started an egg laying business with chickens at one of the local Steiner schools, the Shearwater Steiner School. I think it was year 11. Had a business at the school in the agriculture area in the paddocks.
I think I know this story.
Yeah, and he's moved, and now he's here, and it's fantastic. So big shout out to Oliver.
I love it.
And all his hens. I'm not sure how many hens. There's some hundreds of them there, and he's got. I forget two lots of them. But we digress.
Well, it's a visual overload here, isn't it? It's just a beautiful place to be.
And for those who are on looking at this on YouTube, then it'll look like we're sitting up in a country cricket pavilion, looking at a game of cricket. Doesn't look at the.
I have to do this, Charlie. Sorry, mate. I just got to turn this around for everyone that's watching on
great.
YouTube, so they can see what we're so
That's a good call. No, I've never done that before.
Sorry, mate. I've just ruined your actual
I'll have to take you to every interview I do now just to do that.
Yeah,
No, don't be sorry. That's great. That was a good call.
There we go.
It's a bit delicate, that thing.
Yeah, we've already had a little
mate,
trouble.
let's get into it. You're living up here with your wonderful family. Why the Northern Rivers?
Oh well, we were living in Inverloch.
We will get to when you arrived on this earth.
Yes, let's go backwards. Let's go backwards.
The vibe. I'm just interested to know why you're here. You could have been, given what I know about you and your wonderful book that has just come out, Your Exceptional Life, the travelling you've done, and your career. You could have been living anywhere in the world, really. So why in the Northern Rivers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we were living in South Gippsland, Victoria. I grew up in suburban Melbourne, and we'd been running a chiropractic centre for 6 or 7 years. And Sarah had a meltdown one night, feeling like an average chiropractor and an average mum. She felt like she couldn't give to both. And it's an interesting conversation, particularly these days, that tricky balance between work and family, particularly for women that are mums. And I essentially said, well, let's just sell the business and move north. We were a little bit over living in a cold beachside town. Watching the ocean and it being sub-zero is really frustrating because you want to go in, but maybe we didn't have the courage to do so. You had 2 days of summer every year. We lived near our family. Sarah's mum and dad were living in Inverloch, but we didn't own a home. We didn't have any connections or any roots down except this business. And we had 2 children at the time that were getting ready to go to school, and we, I think, made that courageous decision that a lot of people flirt with a lot, is the nutrient of loving where you live is perhaps the number one nutrient for an exceptional life, pardon the pun. But it's one that many of us feel like we can't make because of our family connections, living close to family, or our work and our income, or any number of reasons. But we decided to give it a shot, and we came up to Byron for a week, thinking we were coming up to go and look at Byron to Noosa, anywhere in that phase, and we ended up going to the Cape Byron Spring Fair, which was just by chance on in the same week that we were on holiday at the school.
Yeah.
And we had this fabulous day, and it was kind of like, you kind of felt like we'd found our community. We kind of just easily made friends, and we did a little tour of the school. And after that day, it was probably 2 or 3 days after landing from Victoria, we thought, this is where we want to live. Like, we don't need to go to Noosa and scope that out, or the sunny coast, anywhere there. We just never left. And that was back in 2013, and we moved up here in 2014. Been here ever since. I still think best decision we've ever made in life.
Just go back to, you just made the point, the nutrient of your love or life?
Probably and love, but just community. Like the word origin of community comes from essentially the Latin and then the French word communité, meaning public spirit. And there is something very special about up here. There's a public spirit in this community that I haven't found anywhere else in Australia. I haven't seen anywhere near as much of Australia as you have, but there is just something very special about the public spirit of where you and I are right now. And
can you articulate that?
I think
as Tony Robbins would say, when you say, he asks you a question and you go, I don't know, he goes, well, if you did know, what would you say?
Well, I think I love that no one really cares what you wear, how much you earn, and what car you drive. People have a genuine respect for you, whether you're an employee, an entrepreneur, somewhere in the middle, a bit of both. There's a great level of like natural exercise. People love to surf, or they love to walk the lighthouse, or just work on the farm, or tend to their own garden at home. Like it seems very natural, so to speak,
inclusive, or less judgmental, or something like that.
Yep. And obviously the social aspect is fabulous. I love, again, particularly pre-COVID, how you could go into Byron Town or Mullum or anywhere and just hear so many different languages, so many different accents, and I loved that, and I miss that. And I think just the access to food. I think Sarah and I were really quite. Are they cockatoos? Corellas. They are just.
Or cockatoos. No, Corellas.
They're Corellas. Just spellbinding. The access to great food. I think you've mentioned it many times when I've interviewed you, and I've popped it in the book as well. How important it is to know your farmer. And I did not know a farmer until we were living in Ireland in 2006, and I was 25 at that time. But now, living up here and going to the farmers market in New Brighton every Tuesday, I know Kate, who grows my avocados. I know Rod, who grows my kale and my cabbage. I know Sarah, who even gets the tempeh. I know Grumpy Grandma's and Rosa, who sells the olives. I know who I get the apples from. I know,
awesome.
Where I get my eggs from. Like, I think there's some. A lot of people that live in particularly urban areas find that really difficult, and I can't help but...
Difficult to understand the importance, or difficult to just get the food?
Difficult for both, I think, but difficult to get the food. It's like, it's easy for you because you've got a farmer's market, pretty much every day. But it feels to me like living here makes it easier to live the life I want to live.
Good call. I have to say, that's why I'm up here a fair bit, and it is a lovely place to be. As I say, Corella's just cruising past. That was Oliver actually in his little buggy cruising past there, having maybe he's collecting eggs. Maybe he did that in the morning. It is a wonderful place, and it's I think it's changing. We've sort of had an association with Byron for 10, 11 years now, and I've seen changes, which we can get into. It's not about me. It's about you, Marcus.
I'd love to know.
Stop turning this around.
We show our age when we say I've seen changes. Like, the farm wasn't here when we moved here.
Back in that's right.
The farm wasn't here when we moved. That was So it's you go. Been here. And I can see the development.
Totally. But that's that's okay. It's it's a wonderful thing to be able to refer back to the past, and in places like the farm, just the amount of growth and its and development, and what it's contributed to to this community. Again, it sounds like a plug for the farm, and it is, but it's not supposed to be.
We just love it.
We just love it here. Now, tell me, let's go back. I don't know how far you want to go back, Marcus, to in your life, to significant moments, your life changing when you're a young whippersnapper down south.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, so to give people a sense of Marcus Pearce as a young tacker.
Well, I love these questions, Charlie. You've got a great way of asking just genuinely soulful questions. I was obsessed with football growing up, the sport to a larger extent. When you say for those not... Oh yes, Aussie rules. Sorry, I'm a Victorian really by DNA.
Because the Poms will think you're talking about soccer.
Yes, that's it. No, Australian rules football. You might have to Google it if you're overseas, or YouTube it. But I always had a driving ambition to be a sports journalist, even more overtly a sports commentator. Loved Bruce McAvaney, Eddie Maguire, these types of commentators and journalists of my era. And when I realised I was not going to be a footballer, I studied journalism at RMIT in Melbourne, and worked in the sports media for 6 or 7 years. A few non-sport times like S11, or when that all happened, when the Twin Towers came down, and a few things where all sport became irrelevant. But largely spent my time in sport for 6 or 7 years. And I honestly thought that would be my life until I met Sarah. And at the time I was a smoking, drinking, binge drinking, workaholic journalist, and Sarah was a wellness practitioner, organic food, this, and she would have known her farmers. She was going to farmers markets. She got me on a cleanse, which I failed miserably at after like 2 days, and I was trying to quit the cleanse to go back to my cigarettes and Red Bull. And
so just tell us about that. How do two people with such different interests and sort of habits get to meet, or is this somewhere we're going to?
It's the do you believe in opposites attract? I think I was about to start work at the footy show at Channel 9, the AFL footy show back in 2005, and I'd been working at it's still going today, a 24-hour sports radio station in Melbourne called SEN. I'd worked there for a year when it began, and then I'd landed a job at Channel 9, and in between I went over to Perth to visit my friend from university, who is Alicia Loxley. She's a newsreader at Channel 9 in Melbourne, and Alicia had made a friend in WA called Ali, and Sarah had gone to visit her friend Ali, and I went over to visit my friend Alicia, and so I met Sarah over in Fremantle. And
just a sort of casual, as in,
this
is my friend and that's your friend,
correct.
And we're going to go for a drink or something.
Pretty much, 100%. Yeah, and cool. This was in Fremantle, and back in the year 2005.
Sure, it wasn't like a organised thing.
No, because I don't know what the rating is of this podcast, Charlie, but I had gone over there expressly to see as many girls as I could before I went on the deep dive.
You mean that sort of rating?
Yeah. Before I went on the deep dive of TV, I knew my TV career would be a very intense workaholic career. So I was kind of just going over to Freo to unleash for a week. But
did you go to Club A View? That's where, if you were going,
I think I might have.
If you were going to Perth for that sole purpose, then that's where you probably should have gone.
Yeah, I met Sarah at the Oyster Bar, which was in Fremantle. We went to Little Creatures, which make great beer, and Bayview does sound familiar, and there's one that I'm forgetting, but anyway, that's okay. Yeah, good times. But that's what happened, and that kind of led me down the path of health and wellness.
And so, and Sarah was in Melbourne as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went, let's get to plane home together.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I wrote her a love letter on the way home. Because she actually had not a boyfriend, but she had a flame in Melbourne. And so it was like, do I follow the flame, or do I go with this new guy, Marcus? And
you kneecapped him.
Might have made a detour on the way home from the airport.
Nice one. Hey, and let's go back further, because I'm just trying to get a sense of so loving the idea of being sports journalism, living in an urban suburban situation.
Yep, Templestowe, Melbourne, eastern suburbs. Yeah, very much. My mum's one of 15 children. 15 children. So my incredible nana came on the scene after Annie Seymour, who I think is an auntie of Mark Seymour and Nick Seymour, Hunters and Collectors and Crowder House. So Annie Seymour was my pa's first wife, and she died after giving birth to my auntie Christine. who was the 10th child. And then my nana came on the scene as a 33-year-old nurse. I think it's St. Vincent's in Melbourne. And she fell in love with my pa. Inherited 10 children, had another 5.
What's your pa's name?
Harry Anderson. Harry Anderson. And he was almost responsible for bringing hosiery into Australia. He was an incredible man. Really? I think he was the president of the
So he's in the right industry to,
Yeah, totally.
To attract
women.
females. Wow.
But, my mum's side has an incredible story, and dad's equally as well. But, so grew up in a suburban, very much that typical, I feel like that typical Australian suburban upbringing, hot dogs and sausage rolls and party pies and hot chips and
4 and 20.
Very little fruit and not much vegetables unless maybe it was white potato.
The white food stuff.
But a great upbringing. Like, I still maintain, I don't think any adult gets to their adult life and gets so angry at their parents for the food that they gave them. No. Like there's a few things we might resent about our upbringing, but it's rarely the food. If we didn't agree with it, we'd probably make a few changes in our adult life. But I never look back and go, "Oh, you terrible."
But I guess would it be fair to say the standards were different back then? Like just in terms of throw a dart into any suburban house. What are you eating? Probably going to be that
barbecue shapes, pizza shapes, white bread, 10 pieces of it. Yeah. So that was pretty much the standard. Yeah, totally. I think culturally things have changed over the last 30 years in terms of even just going to the supermarket and seeing what they've got available these days. It blows my mind.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Yeah. And I don't think it's getting much better. I mean, I guess maybe it's getting, the extremes are getting wider. Like, yes, you can get organic food in some supermarkets now, but then you look at some aisles, it's like I don't even know if that stuff's food. No,
and I think that's the challenge. I mean, I know this is not an ad, but I was in Brisbane the other day, and I went to Harris Farm.
Talk it up. We can talk Harris Farm.
I thought of you. I thought of you as soon as I walked in there. I thought of Charlie Arnott.
And just to fill in for those listeners, if I can give Harris Farm a plug, I'm very honoured to be their Regenerative Farming Ambassador, and they are going great guns in supporting the products and the farmers and the on those farms, supporting the practices, and then highlighting that food that they're producing in that way in store.
And it's just mind-boggling that I'm 39 now. 30 years later, one generation, we've got places like Harris Farm spotting up all around the country, making it easier for people, with guidance like yourself being the official regen certifier at Harris Farm and the rest, to be able to actually make better informed decisions. And I just think, a lot of our parents of the 80s and 90s did not have it that easy.
No, I guess it was harder. Probably less farmers markets.
Correct.
I guess, this is an extreme, but back in those days you could advertise cigarettes on TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone pretty much smoked. They just weren't.
I think they did a great job. I think I was stealing cigarettes out of my mum's little packet at the age of 10, I reckon.
What is she smoking?
Benson Hedges Extra Mild.
Extra Mild pack. My grandmother smoked them too.
Yeah, they were good. I loved my smoking days. Don't miss them. But
were you sneaking? Oh, Red Bulls went around then. There you go.
They were a sponsor of the footy show. So there was a Red Bull fridge.
You had to.
Yeah. So morning tea was Red Bull and a cigarette.
Yeah. That's not
not an ad.
No, that's not unlike in the country. There's a saying, a bandy rider's breakfast is a piss and a look around. So your breakfast was a cigarette and Red Bull.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I know. How times have changed, eh?
Totally, and that was encouraged, I suppose. That's a sponsor.
Never thought I'd make it on the regenerative journey all those years ago.
You wouldn't have known how to spell a word back then. How funny. So you weren't smoking. Well, you were smoking, but you weren't drinking Red Bull back then. Back in the suburbs of Melbourne.
I was called Stolly Boy.
Remember Stollies? Oh, the Stollies. Yeah, those.
I couldn't drink beer. Couldn't drink beer as a teenager.
They're quite lolly water, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Stollies. Because it's a vodka.
I think it was Stollies. No, vodka, but it was a lemon. It was a lemon drink, and I could not handle a beer or a scotch or anything. So my first introduction to alcohol was Stollies.
And you can drink a lot of those.
Yeah, and not really know what's.
And then suddenly go, wish I hadn't.
All goes pear shaped. Yeah.
So Stolly Boy down there in Melbourne. What happened after you left home?
And then it was just straight to uni. Stayed at home, but then after a while, did the media. I was working in breakfast radio whilst I was at uni.
As what?
as an assistant producer.
You do. Oh no, okay.
Yeah, so I was a producer. So I was in my media times. I was often more behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Producers would often say their job was to make the hosts look and sound good.
Yeah.
So I was working with Kevin Bartlett, who's an AFL legend down in Melbourne, and Gary Honey, and then it was into SEN and the Footy Show, and then once all of that happened as a producer, which I loved, I just felt like it was time to stop reporting on strained hamstrings and footballers' personal lives and someone's done their knee again, and you just felt like a bit of an ambulance chaser after a while. And it didn't really, and I think meeting Sarah was a great opportunity to go, like, I became I've got a bit of an obsessive personality, but I went from smoking and drinking a lot to, I think raw vegan. We were raw vegan for a time, but Sarah and I went vegan for a period of time.
And whose choice? And what prompted
well,
that?
You mentioned him earlier. We attended a Tony Robbins event.
No, that's the only thing I've got a problem with Tony. Tony, if you're listening to this, and I hope you are. I've met him a couple of times and went to a couple of his courses.
Yeah.
You tell me.
We might have to do it. We might have to talk about this. This can be the chunk. This can be the meat in the sandwich and the real meat in the real sandwich.
Not the plant-based.
Not some plant-based
Frankenfood.
Yeah, totally. So on the fourth day of this event, it was the recommendation was do this 10-day challenge.
The fourth day of one of his events. UPW.
UPW.
Yeah.
So
Unleash
the power within.
Yep.
So Sarah and I, all guns blazing, let's give this a go for 10 days.
I'm stopping and starting with, but so how long have you been seeing each other?
Oh, we've been seeing each other January, 9 months, let's say.
Okay, so it's not as though you went, hey, great trip to Perth, let's go to UPW.
No, that's right.
You sort of were getting to ease into it. No, because that's a full on. For those who haven't done it, it is 4 days of full onness.
Yeah, and it was great for us at that time of our relationship. It got a lot of clarity. And what we did was where we did 10 days and then we did 30 days. And I think I was vegetarian, and then it was like, let's just cut out meat. I don't know what. I can't remember the exact progression, but for 6 or 7 years. We were vegetarian or vegan, and my nickname went from, because I was at the Footy Show at the time, can you imagine, I went from Red Bull and a cigarette to ginger tea, which I grated and raw cashews. So I went from MP or PSC to mung bean was my new nickname. You can imagine like just the culture of a Footy Show, largely male dominated office. And it was a tough gig.
Will they play tricks on you and like put meat in something? And
I was quite good at giving back as good as I got. But it was a very transformative time, let's say. And I think a lot of people experience it, particularly in your 20s. You're trying to figure out what's your life all about, and that mix of do I really want to be in sport like this? I probably felt I was not going to be a commentator. And I think I was looking for something with more meaning, and I think health and wellness felt like it had more meaning. But there was a very big challenge I found with being vegan, and I think at the time, and I would never want to say that it exists today, but I definitely felt at the time there was a view that if you were vegan, you were enlightened, and you had found the secret to. I thought I found the secret to longevity. People really felt that veganism was the secret to life. Yeah. And looking back on it now, I kind of laugh at some of my behaviour. I would shave with avocados.
And in terms of, instead of froth,
avocado would be my...
With your lather.
My lather.
You look like...
I don't want to tell you how much money...
You look like the green... No, who was that? Shrek.
And totally, and because we're on the regenerative journey, I can tell you that I was shaving with avocados in Ireland, which I can't imagine avocados even growing in Ireland. So they would have been imported avocados, would have done thousands of food miles to get to our little thatched cottage in Donegal town. And I thought that I was doing the
world a favour.
Yeah, totally.
Well, at least you could have just put it on a bit of toast. That would have been at least you'd have been contributing
a
something.
Whole lot. Yeah, but these are, as I said, I'm happy to share any of the foibles of being vegan for 6 or 7 years. But
no, I mean on toast after you shaved.
Yeah, I could have caught it.
Yeah, that's right.
I could have caught it. And that would have been very regenerative.
Yeah, a little bit sort of cannibalistic.
Yeah,
but
it was just dipping.
That's I've never heard that, and that's committed. That's commitment.
Yeah.
Wow, and so
we
tell
were
me,
vegan, we were raging.
So what was the 6 years of that? got to a point, I'm assuming, that you didn't want to do that anymore, or you stopped?
We were questioning it, and I think by this point we definitely had one child. Paul Mayer grew up on quinoa and kale for breakfast every morning, and we were questioning. I think we'd had Derby by this point, but then we're at another event which was run by Dr. John DeMartini, and he asked the question. He must have been talking about food, and he's far more omnivorous in his philosophy. And he just asked the question. He said, if you consider how you felt when you started vegan, and you consider how you feel now, how much better do you feel?
Yeah.
And the question was, we actually don't really feel any better. Like a lot of diets, we had a spike in energy and enthusiasm.
Yep.
But then there was a massive plateau for probably 5 or 6 years. And I think we had begun, as you probably know, I'm a big believer in 7-year cycles. I reckon as we were approaching that 7-year mark, we were probably beginning to feel our energy nowhere near as strong, concentration levels beginning to dip. And you talk to a number of people that were vegos or vegan for 7, 14, 20 years. A lot of it comes down to just their brain behaviour. You know?
And so decision making, focus, talk about that a bit, because that for me is that fascinates me, because I just segue slightly. You know, I don't engage too many with vegans, and that's because I don't like them. It's just that I operate in a different world.
You're
and
a
so
farmer.
on. Yeah, and you know, we produce meat, and you know, it's more what I read and I guess and I digest and I observe is. I don't know. Sometimes I joke to Ange sometimes, and I think, I don't think their brains are working properly.
Well, I think
and that sounds a bit.
No, well, we have a great mutual friend in Cindy O'Meara, and I think
totally.
Cindy is a wonderful deliverer of the information between real meat and fake meat, and
she goes hard, doesn't she?
But she's very good at explaining the information,
Totally.
and that's what I love about Cindy. But I think for me, in the vegan world when I was in it, the whole conversation around B12 was almost like poo-poo. It was just like, oh yeah, whatever.
You don't need it?
Oh, it was just like, all the meat eaters will say, oh, what about my B12? You know what the vegan response at the time was? Was, well, with all of the lettuce that I eat and all of the plant-based foods that I eat, there's a lot of insects in that, you know, and that's where the protein comes. Like, I don't want to laugh, but I do want to laugh. It's hilarious how that was like the message. If you were reading books in 2006 and 7, and there was like the FAQ, like when a meat eater asks you about your diet,
right.
Like, and these were the vegan experts at the time sharing the canned responses.
Don't wash your lettuce.
Where do you get your protein from? You know, what about B12 and all the rest of it?
Yeah.
But I just feel I'm a far bigger believer in anecdotal research and feelings. So the feelings are just what happens in your life.
Yep.
And I know for us, our concentration levels, but also our extremism. Everything that's too hard. But we became very right, wrong, good, bad.
Okay.
And I have a view that, you know, when you do anything extreme, it can proliferate into other areas of your consciousness, of your worldview. And I feel like we became, I shouldn't speak for Sarah, but I'll say I definitely feel like I became, you know, very right, wrong, good, bad, very polarizing,
Very fundamental.
and very polarized. Yeah.
And how did that play out in your relationships or work or things? I mean, I'm trying to work out what.
Oh, wow.
What was it? Was there a catalytic event or situation you went, standing back? Maybe.
I think the real catalyst was Sarah was with a practitioner who said, see eating meat as medicine, don't see it as, you know, Sarah was in the phase of I'm killing an animal and I'm killing another life, and the practitioner was like, no, this is like, you're raising a life and you need this nourishment of another being's life in your body. And Sarah, as a chiropractor, as a practitioner, that was her, for want of a better term, her saving grace to cross the bridge to reintroduce animal protein. So she was doing it essentially for the child in her womb.
Yeah.
For me,
so in some ways that was not an easy out, but that was like, it took the responsibility away from herself. And well, when she took on the responsibility, it was almost like she's not changing her mind.
Yeah.
Or had made a wrong decision in the first place. It's like, I'm doing this for someone else.
Yep.
But that's a big leap, though.
It is, and it's probably a stereotypical mother's response. It's just, they're so giving by nature. Whereas I'm just like, I don't feel 100% on this anymore. I just want some meat. You know, so I didn't need the research. I didn't need the science. I'm like, I can just feel within myself, like...
Had you suppressed those feelings for those?
I'd suppressed it because I'd also stopped drinking. So can you imagine, we were living in Ireland, we'd gone vegan, vegetarian, and stopped drinking in Ireland.
Did they turn up to your house with pitchforks and burning steaks?
Almost. I think they kicked us out of the cottage and said, "Oh, you're only allowed to eat meat and drink in here." But a part of me mourned the fact that we didn't get into enough of the Irish culture. In hindsight, we did so much. We've got an Irish family over in Donegal and great friends. But part of me is like, you realise how much food and alcohol is a really staple part of a culture. Now, what I realised, I had gone all the way from enjoying a drink to not drinking, and I had forgotten for probably 4 or 5 years whilst I wasn't drinking alcohol that it was actually okay to just have a beer. So I was in Bali, my dad was about to propose to his now wife Brenda, and I just wanted to clink a Corona with my dad and go, "Congratulations, Dad." And it was pretty much on the spot. I was like, hold on a minute, why do I have to be so extreme? Like, no meat, no alcohol, no this, no that. It was at that moment that I think I maybe began to mature somewhat and thought, I can have a bit of alcohol. Like, I can't, I'm a 2-pot screamer. I can't get drunk to save myself, really. It's just one beer and I'm done, one glass of wine and I'm done. And I think I'd forgotten that I was older and I wasn't 20 anymore and I wasn't going to go and have 12 beers with the boys. And I think, in many ways, I think it's just a part of growing up. I was just learning how to live. I'm just so grateful it happened in my 20s and I wasn't having to work all that out so much later in life.
And you learn to trust, in some ways, trust yourself that, like, if I have one, it's a dozen.
Yeah. And that is also reflective of the drinking culture in Australia. Yeah. In countries that I travel to for, longevity trips and the rest, they don't rate getting drunk at all.
No,
they're all about it defeats the purpose. Yeah. We actually can't have the fun that we wanted to have. So I think
at least you want to be able to remember the fun you had too, don't you?
Yeah, we've got things like eating is cheating. Like I'm like, no, I want to have some good food with you and drink some good wine. Maybe start off with a nice beer beforehand, but I just think we've part of me feels like it's a bit like what we spoke about supermarkets earlier. I feel like, we're in the process of maturing our culture. Australia's such a young culture still.
I reckon we're still youths.
Yeah.
I think as a race, we're youths.
Yeah.
We're just, I think this is, we can get to later on, that's the it's quite loud. Someone made something fly down there. Classic. That's the problem with having good gear, Marcus. You can pick it all up. The COVID thing is, which we can get to if you want to, like a lot of disturbance, a lot of angst, a lot of pushing, push and shove and friction, and however you want to sort of describe that is Hamish Mackay talks about this a lot, is, we are, as a race, we're sort of in that sort of little bit more, bit beyond being a juvenile, we're in that adolescent stage, in a funny sort of way, but that's another conversation.
Well, I think when you travel Europe, you realise how young Australia is.
Yeah, totally.
Whether it's architecture, whether it's just their daily rhythms, and even looking at biodynamics and the way that they do it so naturally without even needing a label for it.
Totally.
You recognise that for us, and you're one of my real mentors in this space. Is like we need pioneers right now in Australia because it's really only just beginning.
And we're lucky. I guess that there we can adapt biodynamics. Its origin in Europe and some of the other indigenous cultures, and I guess that's another conversation in some not strange way, in a way, is the appropriation of indigenous cultures practices, and that's a bit of a rabbit hole, because I'm a big fan of let's use and collaborate and share wisdom and experience for a better future, whether that's food or environment or human health or whatever. And I find it interesting that a lot of people, individuals, are really possessive about their indigenous cultural potential contribution to agriculture. Say, I'm talking about there's other there's art and science in that form, but I think it's fascinating that's what it is. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's sort of, I don't know, just a different. But
it does show, like you said, when you're referencing, Australia as almost like adolescence. We still have a lot in the maturity, scale to grow. And I think that's something that many of us are grappling with at the minute.
Yeah. Tell me. So, I think you were about to say no. The meat was there. So the beer alcohol thing was Dad's.
Yeah. And the meat was attending a John D. Martini event and realizing that we did not feel any better, and we did not really look in any better shape, being vegan, and we were beginning to really struggle through it. So we just reintroduced meat from there.
And tell me about that first moment. That
I still remember it was fish. No, it was fish.
Oh, easy.
I know. So we definitely must have eased into it. I don't remember the lead up. I do remember we were with others. I can't remember if they knew this was our introduction, like if they could feel the ceremony as much. But it almost this almost sounds embarrassing, but I have a feeling it was like beer battered fish and chips.
A bit of flake.
Because do you know that so often as a vegan, I would go to the pub and get like boiled veggies and hot chips. And no alcohol because I didn't drink at the time. And that was my way to try and to still connect with my mates and go to the pub. But I'm like, so I was having like terrible fats. I was having bad fats in the chips. I was probably having, who knows where those veggies were from. They could have been from China. I would have been more likely to have had an Australian raised animal if I had whatever animal protein I'd chosen. But again, at the time I had no concept, no idea of that,
But that's interesting in itself that, the motivation or the drive for, not having taken meat out of the diet is I'm generalising a little bit, to, reduce suffering, for the animal, but also to reduce emissions of carbon, and there's sort of environmental and sort of sides to that. But when one looks into it, then that doesn't necessarily solve those problems.
Correct. I think that's the whole problem with any one thing. You've spoken about this with your references to drawdown. There's not just one thing that can heal the planet. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for any vegan. Again, I was one for many years, to think that one thing can be the cure-all for everything. It's not how the universe has ever been constructed.
Well, it goes against the whole concept of biodiversity, diversity.
Diversity, full stop. Like diversity for me is out the window. It's a buzzword, and all diversity has come down to these days seems to be gender and sexuality, and maybe race.
Are they not the same thing? Gender and sexuality? No, no,
so
actually not.
It's really, we have lost the art. I don't want to get on my ranty high horse here, but we have lost the art of accepting every single man and woman on this planet for being who they are, no matter how diverse their beliefs or behaviours might be. We are very quick to judge, and again, as a former journalist that would be often writing the headlines for these stories, like we're all in clickbait land, and that whole premise of independent thought by the consumer has it's not being taught in school, and we've all become very almost like addicted to the clickbait, and we've forgotten to think independently about, can we still love people for being so diametrically opposed to us? Like, I think you and I have said this a number of times, like, we're not anti-vegan, like, we love vegans. Like, I think it's actually great. I often say in wellness that sickness gives wellness a purpose. You can't just remove all sickness. It gives you something to stand on.
I'm going to write that down. 38 minute mark. Oh, if a pen would work.
Wish I could offer you mine.
I'll
note it down for you.
No, all good. She's working. So let's go to. So that was a step forward.
Oh, massive.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think just as a maturing adult as well. I think we've both got children, and I think I laugh and guffaw that Maya grew up with very vegan parents for the first 2 or 3 years, and Darby had a bit of that hangover, and then Tommy and Spencer have both been born up here in Byron, and hopefully they get to experience, 4 kids, but a diversity, which I often think is hard living here as well. But even just they'll experience a biodiversity that they couldn't have gotten back where we were living. I think that's very important to us.
Did when you started eating meat again? I'm just fascinated because
ask away.
Did people go, what are you doing now, or you look different, or?
Well, it was more Sarah and I think a lot of people, whenever they're faced with as Charlie Arnott would say, a tension event, a lot of it comes down to for want of a better term, an identity crisis or a question of identity. So, the running joke with veganism is you can tell a vegan within 30 seconds of meeting them because they would have told you. It just comes up so quickly, and it's true. Look, because I put my hand up, it came up very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Well, you right. So that was that your go-to? Was that? Did you feel
it would
you were doing that?
just naturally. It would. I don't know what it is. I think it just seems to come up. I don't know if it's because whether you're eating or whether
was it like, oh, the sky's really blue today. Yeah, I'm a vegan.
It was more like, do you want to catch up for lunch? Well, just as long as I have vegan options.
Oh, okay. Cool,
it would just be. So I think the courage to make any decision in life is really a question of, are you prepared to let go of an identity that you've associated with for a period of time? You had to let go of an identity that, when you moved from, commercial ag to regen ag, like you've spoken about a number of times, like that was an identity crisis that not everyone has I don't want to say the courage, but the tenacity or the pull to actually do. Many people are far more comfortable to just stick with an identity because they don't have to change it. It's safe, it's easy. I was almost out of laziness.
And I guess the identity by its very definition gives them something to be which is an anchor point.
100%.
All my friends know me as that person.
Correct.
So I don't have to try and less conflict. There's a whole lot of so-called benefits for retaining one's identity in that thing. So,
exactly right. Yeah. So I think for us it was the courage to release that identity and just to be cool about it, not to be high maintenance. And I think also, naturally people would ask questions, and we were just happy to explain it. But we were also quite we were quite on the front foot to tell people we were still figuring it out as we went. We definitely started on fish first, but we didn't know if we were going to go from fish to chicken to red meat. Like, we didn't know. We just knew that we were no longer vegan. We were figuring it out, and you can now invite us back to a dinner party and not worry about if you'll have to make something else or
bring it, right?
I still feel like Marcus and Sarah, we love them, but we gotta cook another meal, and they don't drink. Did
anyone just say bring your own? Just bring your own.
You know what is interesting, and this is another vegan gripe. When we would bring our own to like big family functions, we were always a little bit aggrieved at how much the meat eaters loved our vegan or vegetarian dishes, to the point
it's good
where they would eat it, and we'd be like, "Where's ours?" And it was all gone. We were left with the steak, whilst all of the meat eaters are having the veggies. That was just a little.
Well, it says a lot about Sarah. Well, and your cooking.
I like to. I have cooked less and less. The more kids we've had, the less cooking I seem to have done. But yes, I do love to get in the kitchen when it's easy and I don't have kids running all around me.
Sarah lets you in the kitchen.
Yeah, she does, absolutely. Good. Particularly at the moment, because we can't travel. We're doing an international night every couple of weeks. So we did Japan the other night in line with the Olympics.
So you find a recipe?
I do it with
a
child gets to choose.
You're the chef, the international chef.
The child gets to pick their chef. So Darby chose me and Tommy chose me, but Maya, who picked Finland because they were doing Norse mitts at school.
They are too.
She chose Sarah as her chef. So they'll go
different nights though.
Yeah, it's like every second Saturday night. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have to dress up?
We get a little fact sheet of the country. We get the flag.
Yeah.
I haven't done a dress up yet. I don't know if I'd.
You
want to put a kimono on for Japan?
I think you should, and dice the carrots with a samurai sword or something. Or
one of our boys that accidentally kills someone, I reckon.
Classic. No, that's it. That's the next. That's the level up.
But I do think listening to all of your work, I feel like it's a human experience that we must embrace to get to know your food.
Yeah.
Sarah gave me a cookbook for my birthday many years ago, and I'd lived at home up until we went to Europe. So Sarah would guffaw it. I didn't know about paying bills and just the renter bills. I could pay my phone bill, but it was and anyway, all that stuff. But Sarah gave me my first cookbook, and I made it was like a lamb cutlet with an apple mint sauce, and I rocked it. And I think from that point on, I was like, clearly we weren't vegan then.
No.
And from then I was like, this is so much better than just pasta and a pre-made sauce. It was like there's a real art to food, and I think on a meditative level, food is a great stabilizer for your mental health, just for your heart rate, for so many things. It allows you just to be with your thoughts and, just the art of chopping, And I love seeing a master at work in any field, food or different. But, it can be very meditative. Sometimes it can be infuriating if it's a first time meal, but even that in itself is a good growth opportunity. But I think there's something very special about food preparation. I'm not being emotionally attached to children liking it, because I have a bit of a view that kids don't know good food, they know simple food.
Yeah.
But we're very much a meat and 3 veg family. There's no fancy meals yet, because they still don't want a salad. They want the carrot cut and the celery cut and the cucumber cut and the tomatoes cut and the sprouts cut, but they just like to, there's nothing too gourmet.
No, it's a great point, because we're similar, and I sometimes struggle with that. Like, I think, when do they stop doing that? Because go to a restaurant and it's, you can't really go, oh mate, can I have just the carrots like that and the lettuce all by itself and sitting up there, and so I guess there comes a point in time where I don't know, pushing kids to explore other flavours and tastes and foods, and there's no right or wrong way around that. How, just on food, what are your thoughts on, how, I guess, kids will follow their parents' lead. So what is there and in your experience in travelling around the world, is there any way that and how do adults, how can they change their appreciation of food? And is it often events that are not good events that change that attitude? Is it sort of just stumbling into these things? Is there, because it's
Do you mean seeing the sacredness of food?
The reverence, and actually like you just said a minute ago about the meditation or the therapy or the beauty of chopping up something in a way that is in an aware way. How do we get people to do that?
I think I'm just scanning the book. So in 2019, more than 130 million Americans consumed frozen dinners. The name TV dinner was created in 1953, which is as a status, it became a status symbol.
What is it called? The MTV dinner?
No, just the TV dinner.
Oh, TV dinner.
So people would buy their meal pre-made and sit in front of the TV and
so
watch
microwave
TV.
or something.
Yeah, but you don't have to do anything. You just have to stick it in there. No. And I think we have, statistically, we eat 50% of our main meals and 70% of our snacks alone. Now, I'm not worried about eating snacks alone, but 50% of our main meals are eaten alone. For me, that defeats, and again, in traveling and looking at longevity cultures, like, food is meant to be enjoyed together. In many ways, it almost defeats the whole purpose. Eating food alone. Now, again, I understand that more and more of us live by ourselves, but that doesn't stop us from having people over for dinner. In these COVID times, it doesn't stop us from having a Zoom dinner where you just catch up with a friend. You can be one-on-one, and just, because other time, if we don't make these efforts to eat alone, we tend to end up eating more quickly, poorer quality food, because it's just for us. So we, for some reason, have less pride in the food.
It's just like fuel. I'm hungry, eat, fill up.
Yeah, and it's less of an occasion. And I think that I love the simplicity and the reverence of food. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, but gee whiz, we've got to master the art of bringing people to the dining table. When I've been at your place, you've got the heaviest dining table, because but do you know what I mean? It's not a cheap and nasty. Like, it just goes to show. It's almost reflective of how immovable that rhythm or
the ritual
is of eating together. It's like, kids, like, this is where we're eating. And I think we've lost that art, and it does sadden me a bit, but I know in my family we just make sure that we're eating at the table. And sometimes it drives me wild. The kids are wriggly and they're moving around, and sometimes it's over in 5 minutes. But it's a lot better than eating in front of the TV and the kids not conscious, not present with their food and not present with the TV, because they're just kind of stuck in no man's land. And I'm all right with that every now and again. I'm not extreme anymore. 2006 I was. But I think on the whole, we've just got to simplify and have a respect for food that, again, modern society doesn't really encourage.
There's a great book, and I can't remember the name of it. I haven't read it, but a friend of mine, Courtney McGregor, told me about it, and then she read it and then initiated the suggested practices in it. It was called something like So it was French, and it was about how to feed your children.
Yeah, right.
I'm so not going to get it right. Have you read the book?
No, but my number one mantra with nutrition is by a Frenchman, Rochefoucauld, and it is to eat is a necessity, but to eat intelligently is an art.
Is an art.
And I think we
got it right, haven't they?
we must learn to eat intelligently, because we all know it's necessary, but we're not really doing it all that intelligently. We've lost the art of food.
Well, the art of food that they were prescribing was instead of just like putting the food in front of the kids and it's just like chow in, that there was theatrics and there was a bit of flair and a bit of art to it. You know, that Courtney would come in and say, now tonight we're going to eat. We've got some carrot and we've got some cucumber, and the cucumbers just come down from down the road, and I'll make and actually make a thing about what's in front of them, as opposed to just fuel and I'm just going to put it. And she said it was great.
As you even say that, I know we could do a whole lot better at that. I just going there. These are the avocados from Kate this week, kids. Aren't they divine?
Don't shave with them.
Yeah, seriously, don't ever put that quality avocado down the bathroom sink. But yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Is almost just like part of giving grace before a meal is to thank the growers and hopefully we know them. Like I've really learnt that strongly. I'll put that in the book from you. Just how important it is to just know where your food's coming from. It's no use getting quinoa from Ecuador, like when we've got great Australian rice growing here, or there's no use getting particularly meat from overseas when we've just got so much good quality, meat in our own backyard. And I just think it's a really, particularly as a family culture, like just teaching your children, because we all realise like how much we are like our mum and dad as we get older, so, and you can't deny a lot of those things. So it's so important to consider, what are you injecting into your children philosophically, culturally, as a family around food.
What standards are we creating? What's normal in the kitchen, on the dining table?
Yeah. So our daughter Maya tried to not have breakfast the other day, first time in 11 years. And I was kind of guffawing that, breakfast has become the antichrist of the modern diet. It used to be the most important meal of the day, break your fast. Now it's like, don't eat breakfast, it's the devil. You won't be able to go into ketosis if you have breakfast, and you'll put on weight, and and I was attempting, Mate was like, you can't make me eat. And I was like, no, we can't make you eat. But there are consequences to not eating, and we're not with you at school and all the rest of it. And I think she felt the consequences of it. But I think, we've got to be really mindful, what cultural trends are we buying into, and are we reflecting those trends to our children and people around us? I'm a bit anti-fatty these days. I don't really, I kind of guffaw. I just go, it's just another marketing machine, and that's okay. I still maintain that coffee, wine, and chocolate. You look at every 100-year-old graceful ager, they're all having coffee, wine, and chocolate. And someone out there is trying to tell you to stop having coffee and stop drinking wine and stop having chocolate.
And there's counter reports and there's experiments. It's like, no, it's no good. I want to get to that. Just to jump back to because this is you've been touching on it here and there. I want to get to the book. And why you wrote the book, but is there anything between putting that bit of battered fish in your mouth and starting to pen that book that we need? Any moments of tension?
Yes,
or
I love this actually. Great point, because I missed this point out. So I'm reading a book one night called Healthy at 100 by a man called John Robbins. Now John Robbins was the heir to the throne of Baskin Robbins ice cream. He's almost like the Charlie Arnott of America. Your Arnott's biscuits.
Yes.
You've gone into Regen Ag. John Robbins, Baskin Robbins grew up having ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Literally had a swimming pool in the shape of an ice cream cone. The heir to the throne of a multi-billion-dollar company. And one day,
that's not quite me though.
Well, if we do the
there were no pools in the shape of a Tim Tam.
But if we look back at what he did, he said to his mum and dad, he said, look, his uncle, Bert Baskin, had died of, I think it was heart disease. His dad, Ed Robbins, had diabetes. And he said, Dad, I don't want to create the 30-second flavour of ice cream. I don't want to take over the family business. He's the only son. he literally ostracized himself from the family and all of the wealth and comfort that came with it, and went out in the backyard of Canada with his then girlfriend, now wife, and they meditated and they grew cabbage and they sprinkled kale seeds and they taught yoga for gold coin donations and just literally off the grid. And he became a major authority in the vegan world. He wrote Diet for a New America, which Tony Robbins was a massive proponent of at UPW, and then he wrote Food Revolution, and then he wrote this book called Healthy at 100. And I'm like, I'm a vegan, I'm going to be healthy at 100. John Robbins has written the book, and I got to the second page. Maya was a newborn. She must have been, maybe she was one. And I still remember Sarah was going to bed at night, breastfeeding, early to bed. I was reading 30 books a year. I was just consuming stuff, and I was loving it. And I was on the second page of the introduction, like not even page 1 of the proper book, thinking that, confirmation bias, this book is just going to tell me that being vegan is the way to be healthy at 100. Second page of the introduction, he refers to a study done by the Yale School of Public Health, and it asked 600 men and women over the course of 20 years, as you age, you become less useful, agree or disagree. As you age, you become more of a burden on society, agree or disagree. As you age, you realize your best years are behind you, do you agree or disagree? What the study found was that these people that believed that as they aged, their best years were behind them, they were a burden on society, that their quality of life declined and all the rest of it, they died 7.5 years earlier than the people that had an empowered view of aging. 7.5 years. They didn't measure their wealth, they didn't measure their family, they didn't measure their genes, their DNA, their exercise levels, and they didn't measure their diet. All they measured was a belief.
Yeah, wow.
And this was my tension event, because this for me was, I literally had, I can remember it like it was yesterday, I had a shiver run down my spine. I remember going, oh my gosh, what if everything I've thought up until now has been wrong? But as a journalist, it's actually really freeing, because like, I can go down the research rabbit hole, and instead of researching why this guy tore his hamstring off the bone, I'm going to go and research why do people live a great long life, because we don't have many mentors in aging well. We go, oh yeah, Auntie Shirley, she died at 75, she drank this. Like, we don't, if you go, who do you know that's aging gracefully? Many people don't have any more than 1 or 2 or 3 on their hand. So I started a podcast with Damien Christoph. He was 39, scared of turning 40. And he was omnivorous, and I'm vegan. I'm still like, but we'll still find that veganism is the secret to centenarianism and all the rest of it.
You weren't going to let it go.
No, I was going to let it go. I was a hardcore vegan, man. I couldn't be wrong that quickly. But I was very curious to see if I was. And we were interviewing a number of people, and I still remember episode 30, and I say this now because he only died a couple of weeks ago. Episode 30 was with Dexter Kruger, who was Australia's oldest man, and he died 2 weeks ago at the age of 111.
No.
And you would like to know
Why
this.
don't we know about? I don't watch the news.
You're going to love this, because Dexter Kruger overtook Jack Lockett as Australia's oldest man. Jack Lockett was a World War I veteran.
Wow.
The thing that they both have in common, they both died at 111, but they were both farmers.
There you
They
go.
were both farmers. So
Working
there's longevity,
hard, up with the
being on the
chickens,
land.
up with the roosters.
And Dexter was also a veterinary surgeon. But the reason why I talk about Dexter is he broke all the food rules. Coffee and cake for morning tea, coffee and cake for afternoon tea, coffee at midnight. All of the anyone that's low fat, he'd have all the drippings. He'd laughed at us because we didn't know what some form of a pig's nose delicacy was. He was kind of laughing because he probably would raise these pigs and kill these pigs and made delicacies. But he was he would recite poetry to us. He wrote 13 books. And he died. I delivered a copy of the book to him, and he died 24 hours before it arrived. But he also died 24 hours before his own autobiography arrived, age 111.
And so when you interviewed him, how long ago was that?
We've interviewed him 2 or 3 times. I think we interviewed him when he was 103 or 4, and then maybe when he was 107 or 8.
Yeah.
And then we were going to interview him when his autobiography came out, but he passed away.
That'd be a good yarn.
They were great, great chat and incredible, man. But that podcast was the overwhelming evidence of how wrong I was, and was the foundation of what came to be the book. Because from all of the guests that we would interview, we began to see a rhythm or a pattern that longevity came down to doing what you love, moving regularly, and having a great social life. And your quality of life, not necessarily your quantity of life, but your quality of life, which is what we really want more than quantity of life, is your nutrition and it being an art, not just what you eat, but how you eat and who you eat it with, and your family life, your growth, just your enthusiasm to learn and grow more, and your wealth. They can all add a great level of quality to your life. And then I put a big circle around that, and that's your spirit, because you've got to put your spirit into your work and your movement and your social and all the areas of your life. And so that became the Exceptional Life Blueprint. That became it's the way the book has been organised into those 8 levels of life. But 26 of the guests have been featured in the book directly, you being one of them. And it features 64 exceptionals, as I call them, throughout the book. But yeah, 26 of them were on the podcast. So that was probably the big bridge between, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop being vegan, but what happens next? And that really was the catalyst for it.
Can I go back a step? That's a big, you had to let go of years of paradigms.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, a lot of paradigms. Yeah.
And it's not as though you were bashed over the head by someone else. You know, you came to that point voluntarily because you read stuff, you listened to someone.
I still think no one would ever want a journalism degree these days, but I'm so glad I did it.
because
it made me
you could
intensely curious. I think I've always been curious by nature, but I think that endeared me to for it to be normal to be curious. We can either be curious or judgmental in life. There's not really much in between. You're either looking at people making statements about them, you know, I don't like their dress, they don't look cool, they don't earn enough money, or you can be curious, I wonder how they're going, you know, are they okay? So there's one of two ways, and I think I've been blessed to be far more of the curious than a judgmental. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm not immune to judgment. I was a great judger, particularly in the vegan non-grog days, because I thought there was only one way to live. If I've learned anything from these interviews over the years, there are infinite ways to live an exceptional life, and we can't think that there's just one, you know, fountain of youth, that there's one nirvana that we're all looking for. I think the sooner we can recognise, and as hard as it is, you know, with what's going on in the world at the moment, but you know, we are in heaven on earth right now. Wherever you are right now is a heaven on earth, and the sooner we can, you know, wrap ourselves around that belief, I think the sooner we can live our exceptional life.
Let's go there then, Marcus. What are some of the tips? I mean, there's so many tips in your book, and sort of, you know, I guess ideas for people to get their head to engage with. What are some? I don't know. How do you want to break it down? Is there sort of? Well,
I think would you say a lot of your listeners, you know, and viewers, they're in their working lives, they're in their career. I think that's probably a good place to start, because our life purpose is either it's a combination of what you do and who you are. But we get very built into this lifestyle of the human doing and not the human being. Yeah. But really, the art of life is both. So can we cultivate this determination to do what we love and love what we do? And sometimes that's not in the perfect job, but how can we still see it for the bigger purpose it is? I often look at hospitality as a perfect thing. It may not be your perfect job, but gee whiz, it's nice to deal with a nice barista or a nice maitre d'. You know, Sam here at the farm, or going to get our coffee somewhere in town. Like, I just love that human engagement, and that comes from someone's employment. So you don't have to run $1 million business. No. You can be earning $20-$30 an hour and still searching for what your reason for being is. But it doesn't mean that you have to bring a mediocre version of yourself to work. You can still be working a job that's not quite your ticket yet, but you can bring the best version of yourself to that role.
Can I just jump in? That's a really good point, and I love the reference to hospitality, because I did 2 years in a pub in Sydney when I left university. Never planned to. I said to Mum, I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I leave uni, and whether to have a break or go and work. She said, I'll go and work in a pub. I couldn't believe that hadn't come out of my mate's mouth. I had a job in 2 seconds. But for me, that the experience of hospitality, dealing with customers, good, bad, ugly, responsibility, you know, so many different aspects of that hospitality world set me up, I think, well, I feel, foundational stuff for socially, economically, you know, in a community. There was a community around this pub, you know, and just engaging with people and dealing with things. You know, it was a great little petri dish of life.
That's a great call, and that's what I feel like. Work can, and I think a lot of people have been challenged by that when they've had to work remotely. I know I'll put my hand up and go, I've really struggled working from home because of that engagement. It's just a very simple thing. It's a very simple thing, and it doesn't matter, like you said, if it's at a pub or if it's in an office or if it's in retail. It's learning how to communicate with human beings, and some of them are very different to you. You know, whether it's different ages in a pub, whether they're drunk, tipsy, or they've just arrived. And if they've just arrived, if they've had a tough day at work and maybe their manners aren't as sharp as what they normally would be, and do you go curious or judgmental on that? You know what I mean? But
you can turn it into a bit of a game. It was a really good,
100%.
yeah. Not to win or lose, but more, you know, it's a great point. You know, someone will walk in and you go, now how am I going to handle this person? And go, what do they need right now? And how can I make the experience here tonight or today, you know, how can I send them out that door with a smile on their face? You know?
And imagine if we were all more hospitable, to pardon the pun, in our dealings with human beings right now. That's why it is such a great grounding for how to live. My mum had a cafe in Lygon Street, Melbourne for many years. I was not allowed to work there. I think it might have been gender discrimination, but I won't say it as fact. But my sisters could work there and I couldn't. But maybe she thought I got my hospitable groundings in media more than in cafes. But my mum is a fabulous socialiser. She's a great fun at a party, and my sisters are the same. And I think hospitality has a really big, and that comes back to food. You know, like food. If you want to improve your social skills, have lunch or dinner with someone. And just master the art of conversation. I was always, one of the first books I think my parents spoke about was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book, you know, and still to this day, like a timeless classic. And for anyone that deals with human beings on a daily basis, it's almost essential reading.
Gotta read it.
Because it is an art to engage. And again, we spoke about diversity before. It's an art to engage with human beings, particularly if there's diversity in your beliefs and behaviours.
With the current COVID show, you know, hospitality is doing it tough. You know, that because, you know, to your point, it's a place where people engage. It's a place of community, and that's being eroded right now. You know, it's
very difficult to watch.
It's you know, it really highlights the critical role and function that the hospitality industry is and has played in mankind. I mean, in our species. You know, think about, you know, going back some centuries to the pubs or the stables where people would turn up at night.
The meeting place.
You know, and then there's all so many different versions of that back. You know, stepping back in time, and you know, we are social creatures.
And for many of us, we either don't feel comfortable going to a meeting place, or that meeting place is harder to have that same social connection that it once did. And you know, we're not here to judge what's going on at the minute. I think we're all just hopeful that we can have that back sooner rather than later. I just feel for people that don't have jobs that they once did, and for people that want to consume and deliver to the local economy but find it a little bit more difficult to do so.
Well, if we can go there just a little bit, I mean, because you know, I think about this more than I probably talk about it, but
yes, and I'm the same. So maybe we'll both unleash it.
Well, I mean, I try and keep it really simple and go, okay, if this whole COVID lockdown situation, or you know, the whole topic, let's just put it in one big basket here, is essentially about stopping people dying, right? Reducing death in the population, whether it's a town, it's a city, it's a country, it's a state, whatever it is. You know, we as a species, I think that everyone can agree, we're trying to. The things being put in place are about reducing death.
You're gonna push my buttons here, Charlie.
Well, I mean, and this is you know, this is what we're talking about in your book. You know, it's about when we. I guess I'll cut to the chase. I mean, I don't know that less people are dying in the community because of what's happening. I suspect more.
On the news tonight, an 85-year-old woman has died from COVID in Sydney. I mean, honestly. Is that the biggest world shock going on? That an 85-year-old woman that's probably had diabetes for 30 years and other things. It's no surprise our life expectancy in Australia is 82.3 years. And if you ask anyone anyone. And that's number 4th on the ladder in all the world. And if you ask anyone...
Really, Australia is?
Yeah, we're 4th on the longevity ladder, but we suck at quality of life. We get down to 15th on the ladder. So we have 72 quality years statistically, and then it all goes pear-shaped from there.
We're reliant on the health system and...
Correct. We're on 16 medications a day, and we're in and out of hospital, and our social life revolves around doctor's appointments, and you know, there'll be people listening to this that are doing it for their parents. You know, just going from one to the other, and it's infuriating. But you know, I think my media head does not enjoy seeing what's being presented, purely because if you want your exceptional life, when you and I are 90, 95, 100, if our quality of life declines, I'm pretty sure I'll be like, just find a pillow and pop it over my head, please. I don't want to hang around for 10 years.
Do me the world a favour.
Now, some people are different though.
Yeah.
Some people want, oh no, just keep me alive. My dad, God love him, he's my best mate. He would just do anything to stay alive.
Yeah.
You know, that's just him.
Even if the quality was diminishing.
He's just, I'm not sure what it is. As I said, we've all lived different life experiences. But I know, like when my uncle Doug was dying, he had a major kidney malfunction, and there was a lot of internal bleeding going on, and like the writing was on the wall. But I still remember my dad going, "Just do whatever you can to keep him alive."
Yeah. Right.
And I still remember it, like going, "No, it's done." Like, but we're all wired a little bit differently. That's why I say I have great empathy for anyone that wants to keep people alive. But if you just look at nature, it's not natural. It's not a natural way. You would have experienced this in heart-wrenching times on the farm, I have no doubt. But you know that giving someone a lowered quality of life, or a living being a lowered quality of life for any longer than they have to, is just, it's almost inhumane.
It is irresponsible, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
Whether it's a cow or a person.
That's the whole point. And I think that's where philosophically, I'm happy to have this conversation with people. I just find that a lot of people aren't as happy to have it because we've lost a bit of our art of conversation, our ability to have, you know, a diversity and again, a conversation rather than an argument.
Well, I guess also the atmosphere of these conversations in the major media outlets, there is none. It's one-sided, and you know, in a community or in a situation, you have to tread. It's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And look, I understand it, but I think we all should be grown up enough to have it without taking it too personally, and you know, making enemies of each other just because it's someone's opinion. It gets back to your, you know, being curious or judgmental. And
it's a tricky world to have an opinion in at the moment, because if it's not the right opinion, so to speak, yes, many are shut down.
And this is the fascinating thing, isn't it? About, like, there's a part, you know, there's an extreme element of the population who are very on the case about tolerance. You know, we must be tolerant of people's choices to be this, that, the other, whether it's race or it's gender or, you know, sexual preference, whatever it is. It's always about tolerance. You know, we've got to embrace diversity and all sorts of stuff. Agree. But then when you might have a conversation with said person about your opinion, then they're so not tolerant of your view if it clashes with theirs. Yeah. It's like, hang on, were you just saying that? Oh no, but hang on. You know,
tolerant just some of the time.
As long as I can be tolerant. I can be tolerant of your choices as long as they're the same as mine.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure in your world, with all of your workshops and your dealings with farmers, you are working with a lot of farmers that are, you know, looking at crossing the bridge, but maybe not from commercial ag to regen ag. You deal with commercial ag, you know, many commercial ag. Now, you don't hate them, you know. Now, you don't think that they're wrong or bad or stupid.
I did most of my life as a industrial farmer. Absolutely, I know exactly where they're been.
So I just find it interesting that in this COVID conversation, that anyone that has a different way of looking at things is wrong and stupid and haven't read the research and don't know the science. Irresponsible and how dare you not do your bit for the community or whatever it is. Diversity is a wonderful thing. Like, it's so, if you had everyone exactly the same, which sometimes feels like that's how people want it to be, life would not be worth living.
No. Well, I'm sure in where you've been. Now, tell us about that one. Your travels around the world. So, interviews with wonderful people, exploring the art and science of longevity. it took you overseas.
Absolutely. There was Liz Hayes, 60 Minutes. She went to
Hazy.
She went to this little Greek island called Ikaria, named after Icarus.
What for 60 Minutes is on?
For 60 Minutes. I think back in like 2014, I think. And we had our chiropractic centre at the time, and one of Sarah's patients sent me a text message. We must have started 100 Not Out, the podcast, and so she knew I was into longevity, and she said, you know, when you used to get those text messages, bang on Channel 9 right now, you know, pop on ABC, this show's on. It doesn't happen anymore because you know you just watch it on iView or something. But she sent a message, you know, pop it onto Channel 9, Liz Hayes is in Ikaria. And I remember watching it thinking, we've got to go there. Yeah. And long story short, a year or two later, we were over there, and we took a group of people over there and observed. National Geographic really brought these blue zones or these longevity epicenters to the mainstream, I suppose. Dan Buettner wrote a book called The Blue Zones, and Oprah interviewed him. So when Oprah interviews you, you go viral.
You go berserk.
And for good reason. I mean, the blue zones are a fabulous. I think it's a fabulous kind of.
What is a blue
study.
zone?
The blue zones are places in the world that experience greater longevity and quality of life than anywhere else on the planet. And the only reason why they're called the blue zones is because when they found these places, they put little blue stickers on the map of the world and just referred to them. So there's no magic behind why they're called blue zones. Not because it's a special colour of the ocean or anything.
There's no blue aura.
No blue aura or anything.
Classic.
So there's 5 of them. There's Sardinia in Italy, Ikaria in Greece. There's Nicoya in Costa Rica, Okinawa in Japan, and Loma Linda, which is a Seventh-day Adventist community in California. Vegetarian and vegan, but not all of them. So we go.
So Seventh-day Adventist, is that they traditionally not eating meat?
Yeah, traditionally.
So some sneak a bit of jerky.
I think only 4% of Loma Linda is vegan. So yeah, I don't think it's known as like the vegan blue zone, but again, I think that's more marketing than anything else.
Yeah, right. Break it down.
So we've been to Ikaria 3 or 4 times. First time was in 2015 or 2016, but it's remarkable when you watch something on TV versus when you experience something for yourself. And every one of us have had one of these experiences where you get somewhere and there is an awe or magic. Ikaria, or the locals of Ikaria, will tell you that it either pulls you in or it spits you out. It is a different world. It's like going back in time 50 or 60 years is the way that I explain it. The way that they have no, it's almost like no awareness, but they don't do time. And you know when we talk about Fiji time or Byron time, like Ikaria
Broom time,
it's a totally different Broom time. It feels different to any of those times. They biodynamic farm just naturally without even thinking about it. They were making water mills that were created in accordance to the by the moon, centuries ago, without having a title, so to speak. They'll get up from work and have festivals, and people will travel, 2 hours from one side of the island to the other for a local fundraiser, where they've got boiled goat and roast goat and goat broth and hot chips and good bread and olive oil and great wine but they'll do it like their whole culture is so built on everyone else. There's about 100 little villages in Ikaria, about 75, on average per village. So everyone in the village knows each other. They have a great reverence for food, but a great simplicity for it. But little things like in Australia, we have the amaranth grain, but in Ikaria they have the greens. They have the head of the amaranth plant, and they would put them in olive oil and garlic and salt, and they would just have just grilled amaranth, and they would have. That's like just a part of their meal. They would serve all their meals family style, and they would bring everyone together, and everyone picks what they want. No one judges, or why aren't you having the bread? Didn't you like my goat? They all just dig in, and it's messy and it's loud, but it's so convivial, and it's just so you look at it like the little kids are sitting next to the grandfathers or the grandmothers, and they're having arguments, and it's not like you don't talk to your elders like that. It's like, no, I disagree with what Pa's saying, and it's very active. They walk everywhere. They don't rake cars. Cars are just not they're there, but they would happily walk for an hour to a friend's house. Yeah. Like, can you imagine? Sometimes they go, imagine walking to Mullum, or imagine walking, like, we just would never,
No, it's not the first thing you think of, is it? When
No.
you're going on
So
somewhere.
we had an attendee come that instead of driving 15 minutes to work, was she getting a tram? Anyway, she just started walking an hour and 15 minutes to work, and then she would either walk home or get a tram home, if whatever. But it's one of those places where it's so simple that it's almost like no supermarkets, no big chains, nothing that you or I are used to. That it's almost, it feels like a time warp. You cannot find a big name to save yourself. But it feels like it's so simple that sometimes you can leave feeling a bit flat at how complicated life or the world has got. But then there's also the art of, and really for us when we're there with a group, it's actually like teaching them and workshopping with them. Well, what shifts are they going to make when they come home? So for me, it's like I no longer wear a watch.
Yeah.
I realised that I would check my watch all the time, and you'd almost have an emotional response to the time. I'm early for this, I'm late for that, all of that.
Yeah.
I took the time off the laptop. Meals largely now family style, not every time. Making more of an effort to socialise. Just
consciously.
Consciously.
So what does that look like for you?
Oh, well, for me, it used to be every Friday, but I actually struggle to keep that commitment. But at least once a fortnight, having like a Friday lunch with no agenda, like not a business, I need to talk to you about this, but like just catching up with someone. Like I'm a bit of a goal-oriented person, so it's like every month I've caught up with 2 exceptional human beings for lunch. Not because I have to, just because even coming here today, I was feeling a bit flat coming in here, and I feel so much better.
You sound better.
Just having the conversation.
Yeah, cool.
And that is just the gift of a social life. And it's not about being extroverted or introverted. If you know you're an introvert, you're far better with one-on-one dynamics. Yeah. If you know you're an extrovert, you want 10 people around the table and you want to razzle dazzle. But I think Ikaria is very good at teaching anyone that's open to learning just what's important in life, and that it's never a complicated outcome. It's never something that you need a PhD in order to work this out. Looking at Ilya, the way he plants. I mean, I'd love to take you there just to see the way.
Will we get back there? Do you think?
2045, ScoMo's announced the borders opening. It's official. It's official.
That's soon.
Yeah, that's soon. I know, a bit early. I'll be 64. Paul McCartney when I'm 64. But I'd love to be able to go back there.
Let's not wait that long.
No.
Tell me, so your trip there was no doubt a sort of a very eye-opening experience. What have you taken from that trip to other? You've been to other blue zones?
We were due to go to Sardinia in 2020, but again, COVID.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, from your career in person and from your other experiences and life and readings, tell us more about what's in the book. What have you put on paper that people can? I mean, there's a lot in there, so we don't have that much time to go through every page. But what are some of the sort of the go-to things that people can take home?
Well, I think for the people that like the detail, it is split up into part 1, your exceptional longevity, which is your career, your movement, your social life. Part 2 is your exceptional quality of life, your nutrition, your family, your growth and your wealth, and then part 3 is your exceptional spirit. So if people are looking for a book that's easy to stop every couple of pages, I don't like books that are so long that you never know when to stop. It's a book that hopefully is a timeless classic. I wrote the book because if I got hit by a bus, I'd want my kids to know what I thought on how to live. Yeah. And I don't want them to think that family is everything for longevity. I think a lot of people feel like family comes first. I think it's really important that we recognise as human beings that we come first.
We're an individual.
You are the most important person in your world.
Yeah.
You are the most important person in your world. So you've got to create your exceptional life before you can raise others to live theirs or help others to live theirs, or just, it's so important to, I think, know the difference. I suppose the book is an eye-opener in what is the difference between exceptional and mediocre.
I read that. From mediocre to exceptional.
Yeah, so there is a difference. Like for the exceptionals, it's movement. For people that feel like it's mediocre, it's exercise. And why is that a difference? Because exercise for many feels like a chore. Yeah. Movement is something that feels like a choice. And so these are the little hacks, for want of a better term. I don't like that word, but these little subtle differences in paradigm around, how do you love to move? Like, if you don't love triathlon, don't do it. But maybe you actually do like swimming. you know, or maybe you like dancing, maybe you like farming. What I've found in a lot of longevity research is how important or common gardening is in people that live a great long life. So we're building at the moment. I'm determined to become one of the great urban gardeners. There'll be a great regen mini forest happening.
You'll have triffids and all.
I'm telling you, I'll be calling you every 5 minutes, Charlie. But I think it's important that we recognise the differences. So with socialising, you know, if you're exceptional, you feel connected. But if you feel mediocre, you can go borderline depression. You look at people that work a long life and all their social life was in their work or career, and then they stop. Yeah. And they're on a slippery slope to depression very quickly. With nutrition, when it's exceptional, you've got energy. But if it's mediocre, 33% of all cancer and all diabetes is from obesity. Yeah. So we've got disease as a mediocre consequence if we don't improve the art and the way that we eat. With family, again, we feel loved if we've got a great family dynamic. You want to have a great Christmas Day. You don't want to be worried about Uncle Jack and what's going to happen there with Auntie Mary and all the rest of it.
Are you going to offend, or who you should or shouldn't invite?
Yeah. If you can, that whole question of diversity, if you can appreciate the diversity in your family dynamic, you're in for a really great quality of life, because you've got a lot of family time. Birthdays, marriages, funerals, Christmas days, family get-togethers. Like, you're with your family a lot, depending on where you live, of course. But I think it's really important that we recognise that if it's not exceptional, we run the risk of being bitter, like literally bitter and twisted. And I've seen it a lot. I speak a lot about forgiveness in the family section. But what I'm also finding is, and people nod their head when I share this anecdotal research from Harvard, people that have average or distant relationships with their mum and or dad are 90 to 100% likely to have a medical crisis in their midlife. Now, no one would ever draw the link between the relationship with your parents and your physical health. But when you look at this Harvard research, people in their midlife, that I think it's like 82% of people that had a poor relationship with their mum had a midlife medical crisis, and then it was like 84% of people that had it with the dad, but 100% that had a distant or strained relationship with both had a midlife medical crisis.
There was a correlation.
A correlation, yeah. You know. So again, you can't double-blind placebo control study that, but anecdotally, putting a large group of people together, I can give you examples of famous people and people you've never heard of that died midlife, or had a major medical crisis and had strained or tolerant relationships with their strained and cold relationships with their parents. So just these insights, and you know, some of it's quite challenging and triggering and the rest, but just these insights onto the areas of life and recognizing, I suppose the overall premise of the book is you can't just be exceptional at one area of your life. And stereotypically speaking, for many people, it's either their career or their family. It's like, if I'm good at my job, then everything else will look after itself. If I'm good at my family, then everything else will look after itself. Yeah. But it's not that. That's not the case. Life is brutal. Life is really it's quite consequential when we do consciously or unconsciously settle for mediocrity in one or more areas of life. And my hope for people that read or listen to the audiobook is that they feel like they can and will make each of their areas of life exceptional. And it's not all the time. It's a continuum that is often like this, right? There's times when your movement sucks, or your social life's challenged, or your family's so hard, or work is going wild, you know, like that happens. That's called life. But recognizing what your standards are, and then when there's challenges and you recognize you're going to move through this and then you're going to elevate to exceptional over time, that's a whole different paradigm than just settling for average.
Because exceptional isn't perfect.
Correct. And mediocre. Some people go, but I just want a mediocre life. I think, and as a journalist, I think we've got a different definition here. Mediocre, more defined as subpar. I think what people want is a simple life. Yes. Now, an exceptional life and a simple life are best friends.
Can be.
They are just so intertwined. I think a complicated life can be really quite tricky, and it takes a special person to embrace a complicated life. But there are people that can do it. I often think of people in major leadership or major family crises. You often think of, like, you know, we know people that have got, you know, like 4 kids to 4 different dads and all those things. I think, gee, how do they deal with the complications? But some of them can actually deal with it really quite well. So I think it's important to understand for each of us as an individual, how do you define your exceptional life? It's different for every single one of us because we're all unique human beings. And then how do you go about on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to consciously create it rather than get swept up in the headlines of the urgencies and the trivialities of daily life. And how do you keep the important thing, which is your life?
Let's talk about, we've got a couple more questions for you, Marcus. Conscious of the time. The wind's just picking up a little bit. I do have a pair of socks just there to put on the mics if we need to.
You didn't take them off beforehand, no?
When I was interviewing Cindy, we had tea cozies. We put tea cozies on. I'm pretty sure it was Cindy we had tea cozies or socks. You may have touched on it before. I don't know. I'm not preempting anything, but is there anything you're irate about at the moment?
Oh, I do get. Look, I'm a raging extrovert, Charlie. So I think I told you earlier. At the moment, I can't go north.
You didn't need to tell me.
I can't go south. I can't go. I'm already on the easternmost point of Australia, and the only places, as the Pet Shop Boys would say, is I can go west. So I'm very, and I have been angry this week, and a few friends have gone, "Are you okay?" It's like I'm like a caged animal.
Yeah.
Like I was really looking forward to seeing you today because I just am realising, for me and my personality, I've got to get on the front foot even more. My work, I've realised over the last 18 months, running events and doing keynote presentations and talking to real people, that was such a big part of my social life. For me, running an event, the highlight was often the night before, having dinner and a beautiful glass of wine with a Cindy or a Kim or a you or someone, and just having great times. I've really missed that. But I think what I'm learning is, regardless of border closures and lockdowns, it's on me to make more of an effort to catch up with people more often for lunch or dinner or a walk on the beach or something. Because if I don't fill my bucket up that way, sitting at home, Zoom meeting here and there, it just drives me wild. If someone asked me to do another Zoom, I know you're on a Zoom before today, I've got no patience for it anymore, I tell you.
It has its place now, but I think we'll be happy when we don't have to rely on that quite so much. What are you excited about? Apart from everything.
I'm very one. I'm one for the future. I'm definitely an optimist. I'm watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV at the moment. A couple of friends told me I'm a little bit like Ted Lasso. He's a raging optimist, and he's an American that takes over an English soccer team.
Okay,
and,
cool.
And I have a bit of Ted Lasso in me. I attempt to bring a bit more measured optimism into my world these days. But I said to someone the other day, like, if you don't have hope, then you die. Like, you have to have just at least one iota of hope in order to get up the next day and do something. So as much as, if I read the news too much, I think my hope chips would be down.
Yep.
But, I look at my family, I look at my children, I look at my wife, I look at friendships and the rest of it. And I love the life that I've created, and I just want more of that. And and I truly wish, and I don't mean that to sound egoic, I truly wish that everyone could say that they love the life that they've created and they want more of it. Because if you don't, then it's almost upon you to create something that you do want more of. I just want more of what I have.
Well, it is a choice, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The choice to be mediocre or exceptional.
Yeah, that does trigger a number of people, but yes, absolutely.
No,
it's
like, but
the sooner we take responsibility for our life, it's not our mum's fault, our dad's fault, our brothers or our teachers or our sisters. It's our choice, and whatever cards we've been dealt. And I've put in the book, I like to interview Holocaust survivors, war survivors, people that have lived the most opposite life to me. I lived a very cushy, middle class life. I like to get I call it just a gratitude of contrast by interviewing people that have just, had to escape a concentration camp 5 times. How do they actually live and become the world's happiest man?
I read that book the other day.
Yeah, Eddie JQ. Yeah, so Eddie's in the book. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a beautiful human being. And how does Eddie become the world's happiest man? Really, for Eddie, it was when he had his child. I think it was his son Michael. He realised he was probably the world's grumpiest and bitter man, and he recognised that he could not be that type of dad, and he could not bring his past into the future. And that's a big challenge for a lot of us. But imagine that as a Holocaust survivor. As Eddie says, a lot of people never left the concentration camp. No. They stayed there till the day they died. But if it's good enough for Eddie JQ, it's good enough for you and I to create a bit more joy and fulfilment in our life.
It's a great book. It's about perspective, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Bringing perspective to one's life.
As you said, hate is a disease. It's corrosive, and we have to learn to just drop the hate. As soon as we as soon as we leave, there's another Holocaust survivor, Alice Hertzsommer, she was the oldest female survivor. She said, I have no room for pessimism or hate. If it's good enough for a Holocaust survivor, it's good enough for you and I to have no room for pessimism or hate. So I don't want to look down on the world. I don't look down on what's going on at the moment. I'm not pessimistic about what's going on. I can be challenged by it, but that's a wonderful thing. You know, it's definitely...
It's when we grow, isn't it?
100%. That's what I was going to say. It's definitely encourage people like you and I to be more, to grow more. You know, as I said to you, you've got great courage to be running your events and traveling around the country. No, absolutely, because that's what people need so much right now. I feel like people must give you the biggest bear hugs when they see you, because it's like, he's arrived, we're doing it, we're doing it.
Well, there's certainly, we were in Queensland a couple of weeks ago, and we had 2, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and there was border closures, you know, imminent, and we did it, and there's definitely a sense of, we're here, we're doing it, and it wasn't so much about Hamish and I think just as a collective of people coming together, learning some, you know, like really good stuff. Critical stuff at this point. You know, how to grow food, how to engage with nature, how to express your individuality. You know, people are hungry, they have an appetite for that sort of thing, and so if we can keep managing to roll those workshops out, which we have, by the time this goes out, I'm sure our dates will be well and truly up. We're going to be in Victoria in late, well, let's hope, Victoria in late October, Tassie in early November, WA in late November. I think there's a few others scattered in there somewhere, and that's the plan. But you know, we trust that we will, and until they put me in a straitjacket, we will keep doing it, because I think it's just, again, it's critical stuff that, you know, people get together as a group and you know and talk about this sort of stuff, and B, they go home and they've actually got tools they can actually go and grow that food. Think differently, you know,
and just connection to the land as a source of great mental health and fulfillment and
the therapy,
joy. That simple pleasure.
Marcus, we're on the Pacific Highway.
Yes, let's call it the Pacific Highway.
So there's a billboard out there.
Yep.
And you have the opportunity to put a little quote, saying, question, I don't know, anything on it. What would you put on there?
Well, I've just held the book in my hand, and I wasn't expecting that, and that's what I'm going to put in. Make the rest of your life the best of your life. And I'd put a circle on make, because you said it earlier, it's our responsibility. And I say that whenever I sign off a keynote presentation or a podcast or the rest, but that would be it. Or you are the most important person in your world.
We can have, well, it's going to be double-sided.
Yeah, north one way and then south way the other. I love it.
We better wrap it up. Just where can people find you, Marcus? You know, what can they, when they do find you, what will they find? You've got 100 Not Out. Your Wellness Couch is a collective of wonderful podcasts in there. Tell us about sort of where people can find more.
Sure. So if they're on the socials, I think just at Marcus D Pearce, that's P-A-R-C-E, and then marcuspearce.com.au. They can, if they want a signed copy of the book, best to go to the website. You don't have any control over Amazon or Booktopia or the rest. But if they're overseas, Amazon and Booktopia and those ones are best. But marcuspearce.com.au for the book. And then, the 100 Not Out podcast. Charlie, before I forget, we're going to give 2 listeners a copy of the book.
Yes.
And all we're going to...
Hang on, they don't have to share the book. Do one each?
One each. Yeah, they can share with
We're going to give 2 listeners a copy of the book. It's like, oh, but hang on, one lives in Freo. Yeah. And how are they going to do that?
No, one each. And all we're going to ask them to do is to go to Charlie Arnott on Instagram.
Yeah.
And when they see the post for this episode, tag a friend who they think would like to listen to it. They've clearly by now listened to the episode.
Yeah.
If they think there's a friend out there that would also enjoy listening to it, tag them on Insta.
Good one.
And they go on the running to win a copy.
Yeah, so that post will go out when the episode goes out. And if you don't listen to it for a couple of weeks, go back on Insta and go back 2 weeks to when it was released. And that's a great... He's marketing. This bloke, he lives and breathes.
I've always got books in the boot these days. It's the world of an author.
It's your business card, isn't it?
It is. It's a good business card to have. I love the tactile nature of it.
Well, it's a real achievement. Congratulations!
Yes,
I think it's fantastic. No, it's amazing. It's like a second language. Yeah, I reckon anyone who can speak another language is like twice as smart as me. Anyone who's written a book is twice as smart as me. Because I think it's just an amazing. It's a quarter of life's work. Hopefully not your last one.
Oh, look, I only ever intended to write one book, but who knows? But if you write a book, Charlie, there would be, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, that would be determined and inspired to read it, and I would be one of them. So it is a challenge, I'm not going to lie, to write a book, but gee whiz, if we could just unpick your brain for a year and just get it all down on paper, it'd be a great read.
Well, Marcus, you're very kind in saying that. And
The Regenerative Journey.
The Regenerative Journey. Well, you know, it's a good point you make, and I'm, you know, this. You and I are sitting here talking, as I have, and look,
watching the beautiful
kids
kids scream and play.
There's a half dozen kids over there with a dog pissing on a tree, but they're running around. I mean, you can hear them in the background, no doubt. And like, this is what it's all about.
It feels like Life 101 right there.
This fills me with so much joy. It's like, it's the best years, not the best years of their life, but it's like, this is the foundational years of their life. What was I saying? So the podcast for me, you know, I just love the fact that I get to sit here with people like you to talk about these lovely, wonderful things. That's what'll go into the book. You know, that's the sort of the, you know, because I have a story to tell, and you know, I have many guests who have, you know, each have a story, and there's so much value in them picking that apart. That'll happen one day with I guess with their.
I'll talk to you about that. I've already got an idea.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
12. Shh.
I won't. No.
No one's going to listen to this anyway. Marcus, we better wrap it up. Thanking you so very much for your time. It's an amazing read. It's as I said, it's the collection of you know, some years of your life, and thank you for sharing your regenerative journey with us. Thank you to the farm at Byron Bay for letting us sit here on the farmhouse steps with the Corellas and the pigs and the cattle and the kids
and Oliver's hens
and the pissing dogs and Oliver, who just drove past there before. It's been a wonderful afternoon. It couldn't have been a better afternoon, could it?
Divine.
And you know what? What makes it even that just a little, just nudges it into that even better zone? It's a Friday.
I know. I said the best thing about Friday afternoons, you just completely go to another place.
What's your favourite day of the week?
I used to laugh at people for Friday, but I love the energy of Friday. I love the
anticipation.
Yeah,
relief.
I think it's the casual nature. Like Monday, I'm ramped up, ready to go.
Yeah.
Tuesday and Wednesday, you're kind of getting those big tasks kind of either done.
Yeah.
And then Thursday, Friday, just begin to
coasting. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I've loved embracing that rather than resisting it, because I think some people are like, no, don't do it.
Do you plan your week on a Sunday? When do you plan your week?
Yes. I plan my week on a Friday, sometimes so that I can switch off for the weekend.
You know, that's
but it has changed over the years. The more kids we've had, the more it's changed.
Because you get, like, Friday, that's idealistic.
It used to be like 2 hours on a Sunday, I'd like plan within an inch of its life.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, it's too hard. And then I would start to do it on a Friday. Sometimes I'd do it on a Monday morning. But it's chopped and changed. But I'm one to plan. I'm definitely a planner.
There's a lot of merit in that, absolutely. And for farmers who will probably laugh at the idea of planning, everyone has to have a plan, but you know, my God, you know, the farmer who thinks he can
wing it.
He can plan his week to the hour, even to the day. Sometimes it's like, you know, the cow's having trouble having a calf, get a flat tire, sheep got out of the bloody paddy. I mean, it's just, I'm not complaining by any means, but I guess it's just one of the things that farmers have to deal with. And one last quick point I want to make before we wrap it up about farming, because we haven't talked about farmers too much. We touched on it, and it's been fantastic that we have. Back to hospitality. I'm a firm believer in, you know, because I get a few young people, males and females, you know, saying, "Oh, I've left uni or I've left school or whatever, and you know, what do I do?" And I always say, you know, a farm is not too dissimilar to a pub.
Yeah.
Right? You know, go to a farm. Like, don't go back to uni. I mean, I'm happy for kids to do a couple of years out of uni, you know, before they go to uni, and learn those social skills. Play football for the local side. You know, get to know your neighbours. Go and work with someone, experience it, and as I said, it's not dissimilar to a pub where you learn so many life skills, you know. So there's a plug for young farmers.
Absolutely, get on the land.
Yeah, and there's the health benefits, and there's like grow you know, if you're living in the shearers' quarters, just put a little veggie garden at the back.
I'm telling you, I'm going to drive down to Hanamino.
You're welcome.
And 4 kids. And we're just going to be your farm hands for a week. It's a good holiday. You just get us to work, Charlie.
Well, you know what? That'd be great for everyone because it just would.
Absolutely. We'd be allowed to do that, wouldn't we?
Totally.
No, nothing, no rules.
We've got a
stop
big
us.
heavy table down there too.
Yeah, I'm so ready. I've got the muscles to lift it, mate.
You'll have them by the end of it anyway.
Absolutely.
Mate, we better go. That's been lovely, Marcus, and thank you for sharing your regenerative journey.
Thanks, Charlie.